Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Whitehead, Managing Editor of Events at US News and Will Report. We're here to talk about what Gen Z should know about paying for college. Whether you're a current undergrad, a prospective student, parent, a college administrator, or otherwise interested, we hope you come away with some actionable insights after this hour. You can find full bios of our panelists today at usnews.com/events, as well as a wealth of information about paying for college at usnews.com/education. We are recording video of this session and will be archiving it on the US News website. We're also simulcasting on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So welcome to our viewers joining us on those other platforms. Now, I'm very happy to introduce our outstanding panel. They are Gail daMota, President of Education Finance Council, Daniel Matamoros, Center Director for the Midtown Achievement Center in Chicago, Bill Staib, co-founder, chairman, and CEO of College Raptor, the college planning platform for citizens, where Bill is also a senior vice president, and Winnie Sun, co-founder and managing director of Sun Group Wealth Partners. Now I'll turn it over to US News managing editor Michael Morella to lead the discussion. Michael?
Thanks so much, Liz, and thanks to our panel and our audience for being with us today. We have a lot of ground to cover, so I want to get right to it. But before we do, to those of us in our audience, we do want to hear from you, and we want to leave plenty of time to pitch your questions to our experts. If you have questions, please type them into the Q&A feature in Zoom on your screen. We'll review those, and I'll try to give voice to as many as I can during the second half of our event. So now let's start with the FAFSA. First, what is the FAFSA for those who may not be familiar or may have forgotten? What's going on here in terms of the overhaul and the delays to it this year? And what does this mean for schools, but especially for students and families? Gail, I wonder if you could start us off and also tell us a little bit more about Education Finance Council.
Sure. Thank you, Bill. I'd like to thank you, Michael. I'd like to thank both you and Liz for inviting me to be a part of this panel, and also for actually putting this on for students and families. EFC, or Education Finance Council, is a national trade association, and we represent nonprofit and state-based higher education finance organizations. So our members often manage the 529 plans for their states. They offer scholarships, grants, very low cost education loans, and a wide range of support services for students, from college planning, counseling while they're in school, financial planning, all the way into loan repayment. The FAFSA, or the federal application, the free application for federal student aid, is really the first step in the financial aid process, and it is something that almost everyone should complete. It is how you determine if you can obtain federal student aid, as well as most state aid and even some institutional financial aid as well. And if you don't fill it out, very likely leaving a little bit of money on the table behind, and maybe even some low-cost loans that would really benefit you. Now, back in 2020, the Congress passed the FAFSA Simplification Act, and it was supposed to go into effect in July 1 of 2023. And the goal was to make the FAFSA simpler for families to complete, and to help increase Pell Grant eligibility. Well, that got delayed till July 1 of 2024, but unfortunately, the Department of Education was not on schedule with the development of all the changes that the law required in updating all of their systems. So normally the FAFSA becomes available on October 1, but this year it came out December 31 without it having been fully tested, and there were significant changes made to both the technology as well as to the form itself. And the result was a colossal failure. People were locked out, trying for months to get into the FAFSA, to fill it out, to get it out to the schools. As a result of this, there's been huge delays in families learning what their financial aid awards are, both on a federal level and the state level and an institution level. So to help people out, a lot of the states extended the deadlines for their state grants and scholarships. And a lot of the schools also extended their deadlines for your school determination. So it's giving folks a lot more time to be able to get into school. In addition to that, the Department of Education last month launched a program providing another $15 million in aid for nonprofit organizations to be able to provide FAFSA support for all these families out there who are still struggling to get the FAFSA completed and find out what their financial aid is for schools. So right now they're starting to catch up. The department says they have fixed their problems. They think that they're only 8% behind, which is much better than prior, which was almost 50% behind. So they're almost there. So if you are one of the folks that got caught up in this and gave up, I encourage you to please go back, complete the FAFSA. The department is sending out emails to folks who started the process but never completed. There's a link in there that will tell you how to access the FAFSA and how to get help. And so that you still have time to complete the FAFSA, you still have time to pick your institution. Don't miss this opportunity.
Very helpful, Gail. Thank you so much. You know, I want to let all of you kind of weigh in on that, but so please feel free to do so as I move through some of these next questions. Winnie, for you, you know, minding what Gail just shared and the FAFSA situation, you know, what does this mean, or what are some of the implications for students planning to start college this fall or even next fall? You know, does this change things in terms of general financial strategies around paying for college, or good rules of thumb when it comes to navigating the financial aid process?
Yes, thank you so much, Michael, for having me. Yes, this is such a great question. I'm glad that Gail went into detail about how the FAFSA works. But our sort of rule of thumb, and I am a longtime award-winning financial advisor, and we work with families on a day-to-day basis with their education planning. And we always say it's the rule of thumb is just go ahead and fill out the FAFSA. Even if you think you won't qualify, you might be pleasantly surprised. There really isn't a downfall to doing it, except the time that it would take you to complete that application. Now, to give you some background on me and why I feel so strongly about education planning, the importance of using 529s, and I see a question coming in from our audience already on this topic, is so the backstory is this, is I actually became a financial advisor because 3 months before starting college, my parents actually, unfortunately, had to get pulled into bankruptcy from some business partners on a business deal that didn't go well. So unlike a lot of people who start college and you're excited about, you know, your dorm mates and any sororities you're going to join or whatnot, or clubs, I actually had to look for work from day one. So this really hits home. And especially since I've got 3 little ones at home, one's a teenager now, not so little, I firmly understand that if you're starting college in the fall, or you're starting in not too far away from now, there's still a lot of options out there for you to be able to navigate different different ways to raise money to help pay for college, look for opportunities. Even there's still scholarships available. And even if you start school, and you can still continue to drive and look for scholarships as well. But also this is a wonderful opportunity to look for ways where you as a family can come to raise, and even if it's a part-time side hustle, to bring some more money to the table before you walk on campus that first day.
Thank you, Winnie, and thanks for sharing a bit about your own personal perspective. Daniel, I definitely want to turn to you. Feel free to jump in on that. But you know, one question specifically I'd love to ask you is, you know, not only about your work with Midtown Achievement Center, but also some of the insights you share and for the families and the individuals that you serve. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're a first-generation college student. And, you know, I think that's, while a lot of the general advice may be applicable to the wide range of different kinds of students and families, I know there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to paying for college by any means. So feel free to weigh in on any of that, and I know our audience would welcome your perspective.
Thank you so much. And yeah, absolutely. So I not only my first generation college student, I'm also from a big family. So I'm the second oldest out of 10. So I was navigating a lot of these structures with very little support. And another thing to note is that I'm also an immigrant, right? So I have a green card, but I've had to navigate a lot of issues regarding the disparities between a system and a structure that has a very traditional type of student in mind when the rules and regulations were written that don't necessarily fit every single situation of students that are going to try to get and better their situation through educational opportunity. And I think more than anything else, the issues with the FAFSA this year have made it very clear and evident, right? That these are issues that do not impact everyone equally. Even now, with all of the issues that a lot of students from mixed status families, which are students who have one parent who has a social security number and another parent who doesn't, they had so many issues filling out the FAFSA application that were not updated, or even the application itself was not even accessible to them until just less than a month ago. There's situations even now where there's families who, or even students who have to submit dependency overrides because they have really difficult life situations at home, where they themselves need to be listed as independent students. And those corrections are not being processed right now because colleges and universities do not have the ability to make those changes, even as we speak, which is really difficult, right? And so recognizing that these are the most vulnerable students who are still experiencing these issues, it really kind of puts to bear the role that we each play as professionals, right? Providing guidance, support, and more importantly, a sense of hope that this too shall pass and that there's an avenue and a pathway that we can follow moving forwards that'll help them. In my case, in particular, I really commend all the experiences that I've had working directly with the incredible financial aid advisors at all the different schools who are so committed to being able to, even through the worst of it, provide assistance and really give that kind of sense of support that a lot of families have been missing. Because this year, if you had issues filling out the FAFSA, you were calling in the FAFSA helpline. Usually you would be in the queue for 2 to 3 hours. And if you even got to speak with someone, sometimes they would hang up on you if they didn't understand the question that you were asking, or if they weren't able to provide you with the support and assistance that was needed. So having such a network of caring individuals, both in nonprofit organizations such as mine that has provided in-person FAFSA completion assistance for students, or has provided direct guidance to families regarding resources of where they can find those through the state access commissions of each one of the different states, that really goes a long way in helping individuals of difficult situations find hope in knowing that this is still possible. And this is something that really will support and assist them as they're navigating this to better themselves and better their families and better their futures.
Thank you so much. I definitely want to keep coming back to resources and tools for our audience members. Bill, I know there's a lot of information out there about paying for college, and including on our website on usnews.com. For those who aren't familiar, could you talk a little bit about College Raptor and what some of the tools you offer to college-bound students and families? And I'd love to also have you speak on the concept of finding the right fit for college, especially from a financial perspective.
Michael, absolutely. I'd be happy to talk through that. And wow, what a moving stories from Winnie and Daniel in terms of the impact of the FAFSA, and yes, this too shall pass. Hopefully next year is much smoother for a lot of people. So, my background, I've been a tech entrepreneur and mostly in financial services. And my wife and I have 5 children and a foster daughter, all 6 of whom went to college all at once, right during COVID. And so a huge talking point at our dinner table for a good decade or so was, how are we going to pay for college and which colleges would be right for the kids? And they ended up going to a wide variety, from highly selective to public to community college to private, all over the map. And so the big idea for College Raptor, which has been a passion project of mine now for over a decade, has been, how can we help families, and started off as ourselves, how can we help us figure out how much college costs before you apply? That when I talked to high school counselors, what they would say was that you just really don't know, and go apply to a bunch of colleges, have the student apply to a bunch of colleges in the fall, find out where they get accepted, see what those aid packages are, and then make a choice later. And we thought, that doesn't make sense, that we should know whether I can afford to send my kids to a certain school before they apply there. And so that's what we've been building. And the site is, how do we bring transparency to the cost of college. And so as we talk about the fit, there's an academic fit. It needs to be an appropriate school for the student, a cultural fit that they need to be happy there, and a financial fit. And that does not mean to go to the least expensive college. That means to go to a college that hopefully the family, it's relatively affordable compared to other options for the student. And so that's what we've been building. We're now working with hundreds of colleges to help them communicate their affordability and value and take that information and make it available to the public. So that's, and we have a whole bunch of tools in College Raptor. They're all free. And I will say that one of the nice things about being part of Citizens now is that Citizens has empowered me. Like, there's no pay for play on the platform. If somebody's working with us, you know, there's no bias in terms of even from a banking standpoint, candidly, that we're going to do the right thing for the user, and the tools are all free. And so to some of the discussions that we've had here about bringing transparency and helping a family that comes from either you know, underserved, socioeconomically challenged background, that we're looking to help them discover, much like we did with our foster daughter, to discover options that are appropriate for them so they can succeed.
Michael, can I address a couple of the questions? One of the questions was,
Absolutely,
do you have to
yes.
fill out the FAFSA every year? Yes, you should fill it out every year. The other point is that the Department of Education has added 180 nonprofits so far from that 50 million, because normally the FAFSA help kind of ends about this time of year. This is to help all you folks that are still trying to get it completed for this year, the 24-25 academic year, to have it completed. Now they're already behind for next year. And as Daniel stated, some of the problems still are out there from this year, but they just hired a new position called a FAFSA executive advisor, whose job will be to lead the FAFSA strategy and try to accelerate the technology and innovation changes so that we don't have a repeat and that the FAFSA comes out by October 1. On our website, efc.org, if you click on the students and family and click on get expert help, you can find a nonprofit in your state that will probably be able to help you with the FAFSA. And one word of caution, do not pay people for this. There is free help out there. And if somebody's charging you to help you fill out the FAFSA, there's a very good risk that you're going to be scammed, or they may put in false information that could get you in legal trouble. So don't pay for it. Look for the nonprofits.
Yeah, very helpful, Gail, and thank you for surfacing some of the resources on efc.com. You know, I have some more questions before I open it up to the audience, but one audience member asks, and I think this is a good moment to just clarify. So this person has a senior, is a parent of a senior in high school now, who's planning to start college in the fall of 2025. She asks, when do I complete the FAFSA application for my daughter? Would that October 1st? As if all goes according to plan, October 1st is when that opens up, and that's when she can do that. Daniel, I see you nodding. Do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, so the sooner the better. And the reason why that is because remember that the FAFSA doesn't just determine the aid that students are receiving through the Department of Education, but many states use the FAFSA completion date to provide to students the state grants that they qualify for. And in many cases, states may not necessarily have funding to provide that assistance to every single student that applies. So sometimes they offer it on a first come, first serve basis. Yeah. That's why this issue has been, this year has been so problematic, because there's a lot of undocumented students, for example, who qualify for, let's say, for example, in the state of Illinois, the state of Illinois MAP grant is open for undocumented students. However, there needs to be a completed application by a specific date, and there's other aid that's also available that's based on specific timelines for completion. Now, if a FAFSA is not available for them to complete it, but they can submit a paper FAFSA, if paper FAFSAs have not been processed, they're not going to have the right date associated with it. So you really never know when there's going to be future processing delays, when there's going to be things like that. So the earlier you complete the application, the better. The good thing is that the FAFSA goes with a prior tax year information listed. So by October, hopefully you've had completed your taxes from 2 years ago already, and there aren't additional extensions or amendments that you're doing to it. If you do know that information on the FAFSA is not accurate because, for example, it's going to ask you for tax and income information from 2 years ago, but you know now that you're not working or you recently lost your job or things like that happened, you'd still complete the FAFSA using the information that they're asking you. But then that's when you work with the financial aid office at your school that you're planning on attending to then submit what's called a special circumstance appeal, so that they can then take that updated information for review purposes. But the FAFSA, you always complete it as soon as possible with the information that they're requesting, and any amendments or adjustments to it, you'd work directly with the school to be able to get those completed.
Very helpful. Thank you. I think you're taking us there, Gail. All of you have really surfaced some general insights for paying for college. Again, acknowledging that not what applies to one person or situation may not apply to everyone. Winnie, maybe I could turn it back to you, and could you help us kind of talk through some of the other approaches that you often share? Maybe even what are some of the most common questions you hear from parents, students, and others around paying for college? We can sort of unpack some of the different options and ways to approach them.
Well, sure, Michael. I think one of the things that we hear all the time is that we feel like it's too late, right? Maybe your child's already in high school or getting very close to walking on campus. Like, what can we do? We feel like there's not enough money, and maybe my child wants to go to such and such school, and is there another option? I think the ideally we would have liked to start early, right? We would love to have started our 529 at the age of Michael, because I know you have a really little one at home at that age. And unfortunately, that's not the reality for a lot of families because it's just not possible. But I'm actually working on a guide right now. I should have it done pretty soon. It's going to be over 100 ways to save for college. But one of probably the things that you want to do if your child's already in high school is to look at some of these options that are available quickly. One of the best ways to save for college is not to spend as much for college. So to look at, like, I think Bill has a great option. Go to the website, see what schools would make sense and still fit sort of the ideal environment that you would like to be at. But a lot of states nowadays offer free community college classes in the form of dual enrollment if you have a high schooler. I have one that just finished freshman year in high school, going to 10th grade now, and he's been taking these dual enrollment classes since 8th grade. And because in the state of California, they don't cost any money. So if you have a student who sort of is in that age, you should definitely look at that, because you could take enough credits before you even go to college that could help pay for maybe a year of college or 2 years, which would then quickly decrease the amount that you would outlay for your family to college by what, 20–25%, which is dramatic. The other thing I think about is a lot of parents will tell me, well, I want them just to focus on college. I don't want them to think about money. I don't want them to have student debt. Like, what are the options? So then some people will say, maybe I'll take a loan against my house, like through a HELOC, or maybe I'll pull some money from my retirement account. And this is actually not a great idea either. From a financial advising standpoint, the way we look at it is you can borrow for college, but you can't really borrow for retirement. And so you want to look at other options first, right? Starting that side hustle as a family, going through your house and seeing and selling things you don't need. The other thing is there's so many great opportunities for young people now to get work experience wherever you are. There's websites such as Freelancer, and there's Wizen. If you were good in math in high school, you could tutor elementary school kids in math or SAT prep, or even like, ESL, English as a second language. There's all these things that you could make money on, and students should consider that. The earlier, the better, right? It's not going to be life-changing money, but it'll be something. And we know that many colleges now, if you could even pair off a little bit, like I know if I went to college and my parents had saved up even 10,000 from me before college, would have made a substantial difference. So don't think of it as an all, I have to pay for all of it, but do what you can today and look for those opportunities to take on those side hustles. And then most importantly, remember that a lot of people, most people, myself included, we needed government aid. We took out student loans, and we figured out a way to get ourselves out of that at some point. Now, easier said than done previously. Now it's a lot more expensive, but make smart decisions. Look at a lot of community colleges now offer these things called tag programs too, which transfer guarantee programs. If you go to a certain community college and you keep your GPA at a certain level, you can have guaranteed enrollment into maybe another 4-year college. So look at those opportunities in your neighborhood as well.
Thank you, Winnie. We do have a lot of questions pouring in from the audience, and I want to turn to those in a moment, but maybe I'll make time for 2 more before we do that. Bill, Winnie just mentioned, borrowing. There's also scholarships and grants. Again, lots of different options and circumstances for individuals, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, for those who do borrow, what are some of the general best practices? US News data shows that the average college student who takes out loans for school owes about $30,000 by the time they graduate. That can change. That can vary widely, I know. So what do you generally advise? And any insights you could share there as we talk about and think about loans as an option?
Yeah, Michael, that's a great question. Obviously, the first part is if you don't need loans, that's best. And Winnie's explanations in terms of saving for 529s, the whole work study opportunity, that as a parent sending your kids to school, you say you don't want them to worry about the cost of college. Well, guess what? Many times if they are working 10, 20 hours a week, not full time while they're in school, that they're better at time management, their grades actually improve and they're saving money there. And we talked about scholarships as well. So if you do need to borrow, first place to look at is the government federal direct loans, right? And this comes back to the comments of fill out the FAFSA, right? So even if you don't qualify for Pell Grants and other like government grant aid, that the families are able to get the students able to get a federal direct loan, and that's up to over 4 years, about $27,000 that they can borrow. So it's most of that 30,000 there. I will say that frankly, the 30,000 doesn't scare me as much as the stories I hear about families that have 150 or $200,000. And just as a parent or somebody that's looked at a lot of colleges, we work with hundreds of them. There are very few cases I can think of where it makes sense. Excuse me a second. Where it makes sense to borrow that much money. So now back. So first of all, focus on the federal direct loans, and then now oftentimes then the student, if the family needs more, the student's going to need a cosigner, right, or a Parent Plus loan. And this year the Parent Plus loans are very expensive. Candidly, they're 9%, is more than 9%. Plus there's a more than 4% origination fee. So I would encourage families that do need that extra financing to have a parent cosign and look at some options from private lenders. And there's a couple on this call, and certainly Citizens is one, but not that it's always going to be the best option, but the family really needs to shop around and understand what those options would be.
Yeah, can I jump in real quick on this too? I've done some work with College Ave, and I think that's also a good place to look. They have a lot of resources on their site, and it gives you a chance to sort of compare and contrast and understand the terms of those loans. So if you're going to go in that route, just like Bill said, start with the government loans first. But if you need more, there is assistance out there, but take your time to do the due diligence, read the fine print, and make sure you understand not only the terms of the loan, but also how to pay them back and any sort of issues in the future. You just don't want to get yourself stuck in a situation where you're going to be drowning in financial debt for extended periods of time.
Yeah.
I
want to jump.
Sorry, the College Raptor, we have a student loan finder where we actually have a number of different, about 9 or 10 different lenders there, and we will help discover options that are whatever the best are for that borrower. So even though we're owned by Citizens Bank, if Citizens isn't the best loan, that's not what's going to be presented. It's going to be whatever's best for that borrower.
I think student loans are not inherently bad. I mean, I was a first generation. It's the only way I got for college is my student loans as well. It's over borrowing that becomes the problem. Borrowing more than you need and paying more for school than you should be paying. But if you're going to go, I do caution people with the Federal Plus Loan Program. They do not have to follow the Truth in Lending Act. They don't list the APR. So it actually costs you more. In addition to being a very high interest rate, they also have a very high origination fee. So if you're going to look at loans, don't just look at the ones that advertise, because quite often they're the most expensive. There is the nonprofit and state-based sector, which are our members. They're mission-based, so there's no origination fees. They generally have lower interest rates, particularly if you have a lower FICO score. So you still have to have credit. You still may need a cosigner. But when you look at the difference between the big private guys and the nonprofits and the for-profits, it's the lower end credit eligibility where the big savings can be. They can be pay almost half in the nonprofit sector than they would in the for-profit for those groups. So whenever search you do, I would look for them. And one other, I'm good at cautioning. One other caution is when you go out to the websites and you do your Google searches to find the best loan, find the best whatever, look to see if it says sponsored. If it's a sponsored site or it's a loan search site, generally the companies that are on that are paying to be listed. So a lot of the nonprofits and state agencies are not on those because they don't have marketing budgets. The money goes back to reducing the rate for the borrower or to provide support services for the borrower. So you're not going to find them out there.
Thank you, Gail. Daniel, do you want to jump in?
I do, just to add a little bit, because again, I hope everyone's getting out of this conversation that there's so much nuance that goes into every single one of these decisions, right? Because as you're deciding what type of loan is best for you, you also have to keep in mind what repayment is going to look like, right? Because in the future, although the federal student loans provide a lot of really flexible repayment methods, the longer the terms of those repayments, although it lowers your here and now payments, it also means that you have this giant balance looming over you that's going to impact your ability to qualify for a mortgage in the future, because now you have this giant loan that's not going to go away for 10, 15 years, right? And so those are things that you have to keep in mind. And if you're not planning on working in the nonprofit sector, if you're not planning on working for the federal government, then options and avenues for federal student loan debt forgiveness might not be available to you. Even the other thing that I was going to say too is the fact that in many cases, we're also assuming by default that students qualify for these things, which in many cases they don't. So even for the Parent Plus loan, independent students who are undergraduate students do not qualify for the Parent Plus loan. And so in that case, they have to go with a private loan provider. Same thing with international students specifically. And so in those sectors, then there's additional like nuance that you have to receive for. So for example, see if you can talk with a family member and then find a specific lender who provides cosigner release as a part of their stipulations, because that way, if you're doing great academically, sometimes they're able and willing to say, hey, we're going to remove this cosigner after so many number of like on-time payments. And then that way that can lead to an easier conversation and encouraging that family member or that other individual to cosign that loan for you. The other thing to keep in mind is that with a lot of the private loans specifically, they're credit based. So if you have a cosigner who has excellent credit, you might be able to get a better interest than what's provided through the ones through the Department of Education who are tied to the 10-year Treasury note. And so again, there's so much nuance. There's so many things that go into making these decisions. So it's so important to find reputable help to receive that information.
Yeah, such a great.
Yeah, thank you all. And before we turn to audience questions, one more, social media. You know, this is obviously a huge source of news and information for many, especially members of Gen Z, but it's also rife with disinformation and misinformation. Do you have any advice for people seeking to sort of tap social media for good insights around paying for college, or how to look out for that bad information? Gail, I think what you said a few moments ago, you know, acknowledging something that's sponsored is certainly worth noting. But, you know, any of you want to weigh in on that? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on this, Michael. You know, I actually host the largest business tweet channel on social media. We've trended over 28 million times impressions. So social media is a big part of what we do. And I do think that there's a lot of good that has come out of social media. Obviously, we know what's trending on TikTok. There's a lot of information out there. I would say one of the best things is we're getting the word out that it is important to start saving for college. The sooner, the better. That being said, when it comes to making those financial decisions, right, it is best to seek out a source such as the panelists that you have here today on getting that right information. But everything with a grain of salt, because a lot of the content that you're seeing on social media is often for a specific, often the content creator is the one who is inspired to create this content. So it could be very applicable to that person, but it may not be applicable to you. So we've even seen the questions coming on today's webinar about, like, a lot of these questions are perfect for Gail and Daniel, right? Because of specific, like, for immigration, questions are coming in, of course, when it comes to, like, if you don't have citizenship or international students, those are great, but they may not be dealt with specifically on social media. So I would say this is, you want to read enough to understand what the questions are. And then once you have the questions, then make sure to prepare them so that when you do get on the line with someone from FAFSA or whatnot, you make sure that you get the answers correctly. And if you can, by all means, get things in writing. And so if you're going to a loan provider, whether it be nonprofit or you go to a private lender, send them the questions, see if you can do it via chat, because there is help out there. But do know that social media is not a bad thing. It's getting the word out, but we can use it to our benefit. Now, one question I just want to answer too, because I see a lot of questions coming in about the website I talked to you about. So my son, for example, who's 15, he's getting math tutoring from a student who's currently at the University of Nevada. And so they do so on a website called Wyzant. It's WYZANT. So you can go on if you're a student and you're great. I don't know, maybe you're great in a foreign language and you're willing to tutor younger people. You could set up a profile quickly and you could start tutoring actually the same week and start bringing in extra income. So that's that.
That's great. Thank you, Winnie. And
I agree with all she said.
Well, let's pull in some
Yeah.
audience questions because we do have a lot of them, and I appreciate you all acknowledging some off the bat. Here's one. We've got multiple questions, actually, multiple people asking about good websites and resources for finding scholarships and grants in particular. I want to just say a moment ago, Gail, I think I misspoke. It's efc.org is your website. Maybe you could start us. Do you know of any other websites, and maybe it's your own, to surface kind of good scholarships and grants in particular, good starting points that maybe we haven't covered yet so far?
There are so many. I mean, there's even scholarships if you have one blue eye, one brown eye. I mean, exact search sites, I don't have them off the top of my head. Perhaps Daniel or Bill or Winnie do.
So this is actually one of the things that I specialized on. So I guess
Great.
we're really excited to talk about it. Well, first and foremost, and this is like even from personal experience, I'm not a US citizen. And one of the things that frustrated me the most is that there's so many scholarships out there that have US citizenship as a requirement for being able to access the funds. So even though I could access the FAFSA because I'm a permanent resident, I have a green card, I couldn't access a lot of scholarship opportunities simply because of that citizenship requirement. So to that end, I've partnered in the past with an organization called Immigrants Rising. And the beautiful thing about that organization is that they have a scholarship search tool that specifically nuances opportunities that are available for international students and for students who do not have citizenship status, be it because they're green card holders or things like that. So again, Immigrants Rising, amazing organization. They do a lot of really great work. And they also connect individuals with other organizations that can support them in other issues that they might have regarding their visa concerns, regarding their study and stay in the United States. The other thing I will say about scholarships is that in order to be successful, you have to kind of play the game. If you just do a general like search engine search about scholarships for undergraduate students, well, the first couple of searches are going to be like organizations that have actually paid to show up as the first, second, and third in there. And in many cases, they'll give you things like, oh, this is a lottery scholarship where you give us your name, you give us your contact information, we'll pick a name at the end of the month, and then congratulations, you got $100. Like, I tell families, like, please be really careful about that. With scholarships, like they should be earned in some way. And so what's happening in a lot of those cases, because I've researched this, is they're taking all of your contact information, and in the best case scenario, they're selling it to advertisers to make a quick buck out of you. Worst case scenario, you might become the victim of identity theft. And if you become the victim of identity theft, that's going to make it harder for you to access aid in the future. So to make this work for you, work with reputable organizations, and more importantly, work with local organizations. Because again, yes, there's a lot of really great organizations that provide scholarships on a national basis, but at that point, you're competing with students from Kentucky and California and Texas and all over the place, right? So the more you can localize those opportunities, the better. Work with local nonprofits. My organization, for example, provides a scholarship to students. It's a $5,000 and also a separate $10,000 scholarship just for students who have participated through our programs that we see will be great representatives of the mission, vision, and values of organization. Similarly, there's a lot of like the Venture Foundation in Chicago provides scholarships for students who have gone through the public service system of education in the city of Chicago, specifically for that. So there's a lot of different organizations that are more localized. And at that point, you're competing more so with like a lower base of students. So the lower the competition, the higher your chances is of receiving the awards. The last thing that I will say, applying for scholarships is tedious. In many cases, it'll require you to write essays, it'll require you to put in a lot of work. And it's very easy for students not to put in that additional work, especially if you don't receive an immediate response or there's the possibility that you may not get the funding. I remind families all the time, try to put this into perspective. If the scholarship that you're receiving is paying you $1,000 for an application that takes you 2 hours to complete, congratulations, you just got paid $500 for an hour of work. There's no work that you're going to be doing this summer that's going to give you that rate of returns. So really put that into perspective so that you know that that's something that's worthwhile, that investment. And the last thing that I will say is that just because you weren't able to do that as you were going into college that first year doesn't mean that all of the funding is going to dry up. There's a lot of like even opportunities through your own school where additional scholarships become available after you become a second, third, or fourth year student. So for example, with a lot of universities that offer study abroad opportunities, there's a lot of donors for the university that provide scholarships to encourage students to study abroad. So you might be able to apply for a scholarship to be able to have that as a lower cost of attendance. And in many cases, if you're studying in a center abroad where the cost of living is lower than living in the United States, you're doing what Winnie said, which is you're increasing your aid while also decreasing your expenses, which is an excellent way of covering that second year. During your third and fourth year, sometimes you can get departmental specific scholarships where the department under which you're majoring in might provide a scholarship to outstanding individuals within that major based on work that you're doing for the department or work that you're doing for the school. So your first year of school, you should contact whoever's the director of that major at your school and say, hey, do you provide any departmental specific scholarships and what are the requirements? That way you're not like me who shows up the first year of school and kind of goes off and parties and then you're playing catch up the rest of the years. You have a goal in mind that you can begin working on that first year, earn that GPA, begin making those connections, begin working with that department or that professor that will then give you that opportunity, that additional assistance in future years as you complete your education with them. So there's a lot of really great ways of making that scholarship game work for you. But those would be the stipulations that I would encourage people to keep in mind.
Okay, I gotta jump in because I love, Danny, everything you said. I completely agree, but I want to give a website out there because I know a lot of comments have been coming in on this. I would recommend going to the College Board website, which is the College Board, which handles AP exams and SAT. Go to there. They're a great resource. They have a lot of information on scholarships. The other thing I want to tell you, okay, for those of you who are thinking, oh my goodness, how many scholarships do I need to apply for? This is what I have found. You need to pretty much write 3 good essays. And a lot of these essays you had to do when you applied for college. So there's something like, tell us about yourself. Tell us why you want to study what you want to study. And so you want these as your templates. And then when you apply for the scholarships, you tweak them enough so that they meet that criteria, but you don't have to write brand new essays typically for every scholarship that you're applying to. The other thing you want to do is this. Number 1, go to your school and ask your counselor what scholarships are available in the local area that aren't going to hit maybe the College Board website. The second thing I would recommend you do is do a deep dive on yourself. So for example, let's say you're a certain nationality, write that down. You're a certain gender, write that down. What do you want to study? Write that down, right? do a profile and deep dive on yourself, and then take that and then put it in Google and say scholarships for like scholarships for this person, that person, and see what comes out. Put it into your spreadsheet and take a look at what the requirements are, when the deadlines are, and what the amounts are, right? And what the lift is and how much work does it take. And just like everybody said here, don't get scammed. If there's no such thing as free money typically, but you want to look at what those opportunities are in your neighborhood. So start with the school first. Go to your city's website, see if there's somebody there that can give you some idea there. Then take a look at your own profile. And then don't forget to look at what you're looking to study and what like you're majoring in, and see if there's specific scholarships. For example, in the journal, if you're studying journalism, there's so many great journalism specific scholarships. The last thing you want to do is also take a look at where your parents work at, because sometimes at your parents' work, they might ask for scholarships. And if they don't, and your parents are great employees, they might talk to their CFO and just say, I'm wondering if you have any scholarships for the future generation who might be interested in working for your company. And all of a sudden, the scholarships that have the least amount of competition, just like when you're applying for work, the least amount of competition, the better chance you're going to get that job and you're going to get that scholarship. But think about putting together 3 core essays, and then it's just repetition. The more volume, the better.
That's great. Thank you, Winnie. Thank you, Daniel. Bill, here's a couple of questions that I think maybe we'll start with you on. But of course, feel free to weigh in on anything else you have in terms of resources or insights. Audience members ask, what's the general rule of thumb for how much to borrow? Is it based on one's starting salary and a payback timeline of, say 3 to 5 years or some time frame? Maybe we could start there, and then love to have you weigh in also on, is there a difference between the student as the borrower with a parent co-signer, or the parent themselves or themselves as a borrower?
Yeah, those are great questions, Michael. And actually, I'm going to start with back on the scholarships, because what the team said here, Winnie and Daniel, is right on, that don't pay somebody to help you find scholarships, right? Number one. Number two is, as a parent, I look at scholarships as free money, right? And it gets very confusing as to, well, what's a scholarship? And right, so on the College Raptor site, we have a scholarship search, and I'll also talk about some others that look at scholarships.com, look at Scholarly, look at FastWeb, our number of services that have been out there for a long time. When we look at scholarships, we look at it as the private scholarships, the institutional scholarships, and the government grants. Right. You might say, well, it's a grant. Well, again, from a parent standpoint, I'm looking for cases where there's money that I don't have to pay. And to what some of the panelists talked about here in terms of writing a number of essays and the process that you go through for that, we can definitely get much more efficient as a student of applying for a number of these things. But also know that many times it's the institutional scholarships have the biggest dollars behind it. That if I'm going to have my kid apply for 20 scholarships that are each $500 or $1,000 versus back to the college search and looking at both the automatic and the competitive scholarships, they could be $10, $20, $30, $40,000 a year scholarship. So look at all of that, as well as know that different states have not sort of like how the federal government has the Pell Grant, right? The different states may have a tuition grant that may be applicable for a much broader range of now the new SEI, whatever your FAFSA scores are. So with that as a basis, let me get back to some of the questions, and you can bring me back now that I may have forgotten one. The question in terms of the parent versus the student, right? A parent loan versus a student loan with the cosigner. My understanding is from a banking standpoint that it's going to be underwritten very similarly, right? So I'm not sure that there's a big difference there. In terms of how much to borrow for college, if you're borrowing more than 1 times your expected income from your starting salary, I'd start to get nervous with that. And we also had an interesting question come in with respect to the change of the FAFSA if you have multiple students in college at once, which obviously I did. And so those rules have changed this year, where now it doesn't count, right? That it used to be that if you had 2 kids in college and your EFC was $10,000, your expected family contribution, now your SAI, the student index, before it would have been 10,000 divided by 2, 5,000 apiece. Now it's just 10,000, right? And so what should we do with that? And the answer would be contact the financial aid office at the school to say you're interested and have that conversation with them, and also know that there's a lot of schools that use the CSS profile, which is, think of that as a more complicated version of the FAFSA. And many schools still will give some consideration to those families that have multiple students in at once.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah. Gail, you want to jump in?
Sure. To build on some of Bill's comments, for some of those state scholarships and grants, if you go to the expert help and go into our member sites, many of them either offer their own scholarship and grants, or they manage the state scholarship and grants. So that's another place to find them. The question regarding the difference between a parent loan and a student loan, it varies a little bit. If you are talking about the federal program, the student loan is the debt of the student, and the student alone is responsible for paying that back. The parent plus loan is the debt of the parent, and the parent is then responsible for paying back that debt. And the benefits to the parent loan, the repayment benefits, are not the same as they are for the student. If you're talking about a private loan and you're a student and you take out the student loan and you do not have a cosigner, it is that student's debt. If there is a cosigner and it's a student loan, it's the student's debt, but the cosigner will be responsible if that student doesn't repay. So that's why Daniel suggested look for loans that might have a cosigner release after so many payments or so many years, because then that releases the cosigner for that. So never cosign unless you trust that student's going to pay it back or you're willing to pay it back. And if you take out a parent loan in the private sector and you are the parent taking out a loan, that's your debt. So it's confusing, but nothing about higher ed finance is easy.
And I did want to jump in real quick, because there's that other question about like debt loads, right? And to nuance that even better, or a little bit more, that's also going to depend on what the student is planning on doing, right? Because if you are planning on going into a career that you know by default requires that the student get a master's degree or a doctorate or beyond, to me, it doesn't really make sense to go into a massive amount of debt for your undergraduate, because you know that there's a lot of aid that won't be available for you in the form of grants or other scholarships when you're completing your master's, when you're completing your doctorate. So have that in the back of your head. If you know that you're going into psychology, for example, you can't practice with a bachelor's, right? You need to have a master's. So you may want to go somewhere for your undergraduate that's a little bit more affordable. So then you can make that bigger investment on the degree that's actually going to help you become employed in the future. So those are also projection conversations that you need to have that are going to determine what the acceptable debt loans should be for the student.
Thank you.
And I also have one more comment on that too, is when you're thinking about how much to borrow, don't be thinking that your loan will definitely be forgiven or canceled. Okay. Unless it's in statute, that benefit may not be here in the future. The other piece is, even if you're going through a forgiveness program that is in statute, like public service loan forgiveness or some of the other ones that are out there, you still have to meet certain requirements to be eligible for that forgiveness or cancellation when it comes due. So I always tell people, plan on borrowing what you can afford to repay, not on what you hope you end up having to repay because something's been canceled.
Yeah, thank you, Gail. I'm seeing a lot of questions on loan forgiveness in general, so that's really helpful. I think that gives an answer there. We only have somehow 5 minutes or so left, so I want to try to squeeze in a few more questions from the audience before for a final wrap up and hear from each of you. We're getting a lot of questions from or about international students? And again, I think we talked about that a little bit earlier, but maybe just to sort of ask it directly. Is the FAFSA applicable only to students who are US citizens or green card holders? And I guess just more broadly, what are some of the options for international students? Is it is it really private loans or scholarships? Daniel, I see you nodding. Maybe you could just give a quick answer on that.
Yeah, that's correct. So the FAFSA is only eligible for US citizens or green card holders. For immigrants who are international students, I've actually seen them be able to access aid through connecting with nonprofits. So faith-based organizations where you can receive assistance by committing to doing some form of service component to that faith-based organization. That's where a lot of international students have been successful in achieving or receiving additional aid. Aside from that, and this is an underused resource, if you are an international student who has a consulate near the university that you live, visit that consulate, because that consulate might assist you in connecting you with business holders of your nationality who might be able to sponsor a portion of your balance, or they might also be able to provide you with resources from your nation of origin that provide scholarships for students studying in the United States. So consulates, really sometimes pretty good resource to help out. Other than that, nonprofits or faith-based organizations and that website, Immigrants Rising, is another excellent tool.
Thank you. More of maybe a procedural question, but going back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, is it beneficial to fill out the FAFSA every year that you're in school, or does the result you get the first year follow you for all 4 years or beyond? Gail, I see you.
Every year.
Every year. Absolutely. And Bill, I'm sure you can attest to that with multiple kids in college at the same time.
Yes, and one advantage of the FAFSA, I can't talk today, FAFSA simplification is it makes it easier to file when you have a whole bunch of kids in school at once.
Great.
As long as it works.
It works.
So next year we're keeping fingers crossed.
Well, let's pause there on the audience questions. I hate to leave so many unanswered, but I think you all did a great job of weaving in insights and answers to so many of those. But just as a final question, and again, I'd love to hear from each of you. What have we missed, or what else would you want to kind of share or highlight or reaffirm, or even are there myths and misconceptions that we haven't talked about or that you want to kind of re-emphasize to make sure that our audience can kind of take away, no matter their situation? I know that's a huge question, and there's so much else that we could talk about, but maybe we could just go around the horn and hear from each of you. Winnie, sorry to pick you first, but could you get us started?
Thank you, Michael. Well, I guess what I would end with is this, I had to take on a bunch of loans and federal and state grants and aid, a lot of financial aid. But at the end of the day, this is not a negative thing. Once you go through the process of learning how to earn money to pay for the expense and investment of college, which is so important, you will get there. If you do the homework ahead of time, don't over borrow. Make sure you understand the terms of what you're borrowing. Know what the expectations of you as a student to maintain certain grades for certain grants and whatnot. Once you are all done with this and your final payment to that student loan is done, in most cases, your credit score will soar. And you will have the work ethic and the financial knowledge that many adults today don't even have. So think of it as a positive, not as a negative. And do know that the majority of Americans today that are going towards higher education do need some sort of financial aid, and you are not alone. But it's a beautiful thing. Embrace it, learn it, and most important, take advantage of this time to learn personal finance, because in addition to everything that you're borrowing and getting in terms of college, if you can on the flip side learn how to budget, learn how to keep your credit strong, know what to do when someone borrows money, and when you ask them to pay you back, if they don't Venmo you right away, what to do, and know how to pay for things when you're in college. Those are the things that will stay with you for the rest of your life. And having the opportunity, opportunity of working while in college will not only bring you extra income, but it'll develop business skills and relationships so that by the time you graduate, you might even have a really nice job at the end of it.
Gail?
I echo everything that Winnie just said. She said it beautifully. Just keep in mind that a college education or any career path that's post-secondary after high school that you're choosing to go into is you're investing in yourself. You're investing in your future. And it is one of the few things out there that you can buy that is an appreciating asset. It's not a depreciating asset. So hopefully you'll earn more money in the future. It's just about making smart choices. And I always tell people, you know, you want to make sure that the choices you make today are not going to limit you on what your options are for tomorrow. And so all the advice that they have received today from these panelists is going to put you on a right track for success. And I say go for it and have fun.
Bill?
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about paying for college and college selection. And one thing that we've touched on here in the last couple summaries is the career choice, right? That a four-year college is not for everybody. There are great two-year colleges. There's great trade school opportunities. So really, as a parent and as a student, know yourself and help use tools to see what the job opportunities are. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics has a great tool. College Raptor has a career finder where that we can help the student see what the growth is in terms of opportunities and careers, what they pay, which colleges may help prepare you for those. So if we look at the big picture, know that a four-year college isn't for everybody, and that's part of the paying for college. The economic choice is making a good choice up front.
Thank you. And Daniel, final thoughts from you.
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about the impact on aid on students, but one of the things that I've actually seen, especially this year, so big part of my role is helping and supporting students through situations of crisis, right? And one of the biggest crises, which actually the National Association of Financial Aid Administrators shared more information on, is the fact that the FAFSA debacle didn't just impact students, it also impacted institutions. And the worst thing that you can have happen to you is begin attending an institution, and all of a sudden that institution is now closing. There's around 6 institutions closing every single week because they are not making their enrollments, because the FAFSA was such an issue this year that students are not committing to institutions. And so to that end, it's really important to do your research, right, on these institutions. Back in my day, I used to be of the mentality that, if you're not going to a top 5 school, like it doesn't matter what else you pick. It really is just your pick of the litter. And sometimes there's a lot of like small private institutions that their big thing has been like, well, we offer a lot of scholarships to our students where the cost of attendance usually pairs up to what you'd be paying at a state or a flagship institution. But a lot of those like smaller private institutions, if they don't have a solid financial foundation or footing, they're the ones that are closing. A lot of the regional institutions are also the ones that are closing. And when a student is forced to transfer from one school to the other, it does impact their ability to kind of proceed towards graduation. So be really careful regarding that. Ask questions, look at the net price calculator, look at the outcomes of the students in those organizations, because that should then also assist you with that school choice question so that you're not landing yourself in a situation where, because of things like this, which we really can't control, the student is left without a school, they're left without support, they're left without assistance. And if you are found in that situation, please reach out. I mean, there's nonprofits and other organizations, there's representatives and professionals that are specifically here to help you through these crises, so you can make it through to graduation, which is what we all want for all students.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Daniel, Gail, Winnie, Bill, for your time and your insights today. Thanks also to our audience for their great questions. We did record this webinar and it will be posted on usnews.com. So we encourage you to watch back, to share it with your networks. And for more strategies on paying for college, as well as a lot of information about navigating the college admissions process and search, I encourage you to visit usnews.com/education. I hope you'll join us again for a future US News virtual event. Once again, thank you so much and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.